My name is Nick Carter. I've been a respiratory therapist since 2010, and I guess the reason I'm sending a video in is because I would like to. I've never have talked about COVID and how how it really was. As a respiratory therapist, I worked through that and worked in I think 5 different states. Last year I took a job as a director for a department. Made it about 8 months before I had to step away. I can't do my job anymore because of COVID. If I'm honest, it completely ruined me. So yeah, I'd like to. It'd be cool to talk about what that was really like and what we as medical professionals went through. I know that people don't get it. They don't understand how horrible that was.
Nick, you're a respiratory therapist based in Oklahoma.
Oklahoma, yep. Norman, Oklahoma. Yep.
Tell me about your how you got into that. You went to school for it?
I did. Yes. Kind of a funny story, I guess. I was working job totally not related to the medical field at the time, and my best friend and I had met him there, got laid off, and so he had always been talking about different careers in the medical field, just for longevity, and respiratory therapy was one of the few that it sounded interesting and sounded like I might actually want to try it. So I just decided to kind of do it. And it just so happened that there was a program taking a brand new program. We were the first class to go through. They were taking some new students, a new class, and it was starting soon. So just a timing thing. It just kind of worked out. And yeah, I went to school with him. It was good.
You've been doing this for how long?
2010 is when I graduated. So started in 2009, and 2010 is, yeah.
And at some point in the middle of that, you came across COVID.
Yeah, sure did.
COVID changed your whole life, didn't it?
It did. In good ways and bad. Yeah.
Because you're the one who is responsible for the ventilators, which are being used on almost every patient that was seriously affected.
Yeah. Anybody that was deemed significant enough to not be able to breathe on their own would have to be put on a vent. We tried to delay that as much as possible. There's another circumstance, we can get into that too, where we tried other things. Especially at the beginning, we tried a lot of different things, yeah. But if you are in the ICU with any sort of cardiopulmonary issues, you might have come across me, especially during COVID.
You did this in several hospitals, right?
I did, yes. I worked in six states total during COVID. Yeah.
This is because you had like contracts that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I would take let's see. I just started with emails actually. That's how I got going. I got emails about contracts that were opening up in Massachusetts, and at the beginning of COVID, especially for a while. In Oklahoma, where I'm from, where I lived, we had 0 cases. And so at that point, I had been an RT for a little over 10 years. And so I kind of felt like with the skill set, my ICU background, if I can, then I should help. I kind of felt like I needed to. Once I realized how bad it was getting, it was something I had to do. I had to go do it. So so Massachusetts, and so that a contract will be typically 8 to 13 weeks, and then with the option a lot of times to renew if the hospital wants to. And so a lot of times I would renew for maybe a few more weeks, and sometimes another 8 weeks or so at certain places, and then move on. I was trying to move on basically to where was needed the most, where I felt like I was needed and could make the most impact throughout COVID.
What are some of the states you worked in?
I worked in Massachusetts. I worked in New Jersey, Texas, Wisconsin, back to New Jersey for a few different hospitals there that time, and then wound up back in Oklahoma. 2 different hospitals in Oklahoma.
And tell me about your experiences with COVID. I'm sure you saw things on the front line that a lot of us didn't.
Yep. Yeah, definitely things I won't ever forget. What specifically would you like to know?
Well, I mean, just you saw people dying, I'm sure.
I did. Yeah, okay, we can talk about that. So in Dallas, those were, I won't name the hospital, but those were the sickest patients that I've ever seen. It was wild. So I worked nights primarily, almost exclusively, and those are 12-hour shifts at least. Usually on a contract you will have, at least for respiratory contracts, I know your option will be for 3, 4, 5, however many shifts a week. So mine, almost every single one I did was at least 4 shifts a week, and then I would pick up if I could. So in Dallas, every night that I worked, and I was there for at least 2 months. I think it was an 8-week contract. The area I was in was a surgical suite. The whole floor was a surgical suite that had been converted to a COVID unit, as close as we could get to one. And I don't mean to take anything away from the hospitals. We did as best as we could. It was just, sometimes we wish we could have done better sometimes. So in just my unit, that floor, at least one person coded and died every shift that I had, at least one. And that was just my unit. The rest of the hospital, the rest of the night, you'd still hear codes going off throughout the rest of the hospital. That was every single night. Also one of the I don't know if it was sadder situations, but a situation that struck me kind of harder than most was there was a doctor during one of these codes at that hospital who when you code a patient, there's typically you just start going down the list of things that, we'll try this. If it doesn't work, you go on to that. And we had gone through that list a couple of times, just trying anything. And I don't think I've ever heard and seen somebody look so helpless. And this was a doctor, And I just remember we get to the end of this code and she's in tears and looking around the room, and just never will forget the look that she just was pleading with anybody in the room, and just the look on her face was just begging, and she did. She said, "Does anybody have anything they can think of that we haven't tried? Does anybody have any ideas?" And of course it was no. We all were out of ideas by that point. But I just remember, man, that one, just feeling so helpless. I've never felt that helpless. I don't think I ever possibly could again. Just trying, seeing something in front of you that should be impossible. There were some patients that weren't even that critical, but I'm sitting there talking to them like you and I are talking, and their oxygen saturation is barely in the 80s, and they're having no issue, no struggle. And that probably doesn't sound that wild to somebody on the outside, but then that's when you do something especially for a decade, and then see something that has been impossible your entire career happen right in front of you. It's just I don't know, I don't have a word for that. Just how helpless that makes you feel. Everything that you've been taught and should be working, it's just not working.
And you're losing patients of all ages, or are these mostly older?
Yeah, so I only work with adults. You can specialize, kind of like in nursing. So you can do pediatrics, NICU type stuff, that type of thing. I typically only work with patients that are 18 and up. I have worked with younger patients, but during COVID, the youngest patients that I treated were around my age, so I'm fairly young. But yeah, I definitely treated people that were my age, and that hit home too. That hit a little harder. Yeah.
Did you ever catch it?
I didn't. Thankfully, knock on wood. I don't know how. I even at one point I had a trach patient cough right in my face. Of course, I had a mask and a face shield, but it got in my eyes, as gross as that is. Yeah, that was one of many instances where I know I was exposed. It was just, and I don't know how. I was tested absolutely after that time, but yeah, somehow I got lucky and didn't catch it.
And the hospital was jam-packed with patients?
At the time, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's,
Every bed?
oh, yeah. We didn't have any empty beds, and we had patients doubled up in rooms. An empty bed wasn't a thing. Most of the places I was at. I will say, when I worked I got kind of a ground ball getting into COVID when I first started traveling. My first contract was at a field hospital in Massachusetts, which that was cool. I had never gotten to do that before, but so we took patients, basically overflow from the hospital. If patients were not critical enough where they needed to be in the actual hospital, we would kind of free up some room and bring them over to the field hospital. One amazing thing and one positive thing that I'll say about COVID is this is a good reference for that. Everybody that showed up there, except for a few people that were sent over from the hospital that put it on, and this was like in an event center type of thing, is where they set it up inside, so it was covered and everything. But aside from for a few people that were from the main hospital, everybody else was from different states and different parts of the country, and it was amazing because we kind of had the infrastructure there, but then we had to make it work once everybody started showing up, and we had that thing running so smoothly. So that was I was really proud to be a part of just a group of people that were able to come together, especially under the circumstances. And
what was the morale like?
Well. There, it was good. It was really good. I have to say, morale was one thing that I think we did a pretty good job with. Even if we weren't encouraging each other constantly, I still feel like everybody kept each other going and kept the atmosphere at least up pretty well.
When you're losing patients daily.
Yeah, I mean, some days, and everybody had good days and bad days. There were plenty of days that I went back to my hotel and just walked in, and I have a dog. I have a husky. I would just grab her and cry into her. I got her during COVID. She traveled. She's been to like 11 different states with me. She's been all over the place. But she got me through it. For sure. She was a huge part of me getting through it.
What was the hardest part for you?
The hardest part of COVID? I don't know if I can don't know if I could give you just one answer for that. I mean, it was... I don't know. That's a hard answer. That's a hard one to answer. Give just one answer. I mean, it was, for me personally, I know that being away from my family was very hard. Most of the time, I was alone in hotels and stuff, and that was tough. The isolation. And at the time, even if... So us as medical workers, especially in the ICU and the ER, we're notorious for being... I don't want to call it... The atmosphere, or the culture is not so much macho, but very tough. Everybody wants to be tough all the time and perceived that way. And... it is necessary, I think, to be that way to an extent, but it takes a toll. And I thought for a long time that compartmentalization was something that I was good at, and I am. But just because you put it over there and you're able to contain it there doesn't necessarily... It's not necessarily healthy still, and we're also, as healthcare workers, bad about talking about stuff, especially things. Well, there's never been anything of this magnitude, I guess, but traumatic situations, we're really bad about talking about that, and I know personally I definitely am. So it was hard to not really, we were so isolated. Everybody was so isolated at the time. Even if I wanted to talk to somebody, it seemed like there was kind of a limit on how much I even could. But just, I think the hardest thing just had to have been just feeling like I couldn't do enough. No matter what I did, it just wasn't enough. And I wanted to do more. I still don't feel like I've done enough, that I did enough. And that's probably the hardest thing, was seeing so many people die, and coworkers too. I mean, there were people who I got to know, albeit briefly, but got to know them, and then they didn't come back. And you'd hear later on that, they had passed away. And man, I had never been through anything like that. And the only thing that I can even think to compare it to, not that it's even on the same level, is to people that have seen war and seen at least death on a scale kind of like that. But again, and I don't want to diminish anything from our service members at all. It's different. But that's just the only thing I can think to compare it to is that. And I just, nowadays, to say PTSD, it feels like a buzzword, and it feels like, oh, I just want attention type of thing. It's what it comes off as. And if you worked in the hospital, especially the ICU and the ER during COVID, that got PTSD to some extent, for sure. Have to.
How do you feel healthcare, hospitals, the government handled this emergency?
I think we definitely should have been better prepared. I think that at the very minimum we should have been better prepared. It kind of, to me, I feel like COVID, in a way, like our healthcare system, if you look at it as a sort of a shield, right? The semi-transparent shield protects us from viruses and whatnot, pandemics. I feel like COVID just exposed all the holes and all the places we were lacking, all the weaknesses that we had. And at least personally, as a respiratory therapist, as somebody who's done this for well over a decade, I didn't know how unprepared we were. And I felt stupid, felt really stupid. And that was I was really angry for a while at the beginning of COVID about that. I was angry that how could this have happened? How is it this bad? And, I think that might sound silly. That might sound naive on my part. But that's, I go to work and I know how to do my job and do it pretty well. And that's what I focus on. That's my specialty. That's what I've gone to school for. That's what I do. And to people, this kind of ties in with the comments that I've seen about anybody in the medical field, but you knew what you should have known what you were signing up for, that type of thing. And that's yes and no. I mean, to me, what I signed up for absolutely was the chance to help people and save lives. That's what I love doing. That's what I want to continue to do. But I also signed up to have the tools to do my job. I also signed up to have the resources there to do my job. And those things just weren't available sometimes, a lot of the time during COVID. Supply chains, you name it. But it just, that's, and I'm not going to sit here and say that, as far as us being better prepared, that's not my job. I'm not saying that at all. I think now I feel like I have a duty to pass on what I've learned and to help educate people as best I can.
Was there burnout?
Absolutely. Yeah. All of us. I mean, there was everybody. I mean, to this day, I'm still dealing with that. Just after, and I had gone through burnout before COVID a couple of times. And it was, one of those times was in my early mid-20s, and I decided to try, I'd been an RT for a little while, decided to go do some other things, came back to the field. And that was really more along the lines of, I think I was looking at it as a job and not a career, I think is what had a lot to do with that. And once I started viewing it that way, it was better. But during COVID, I mean, it probably 3 or 4 times, and the last time was the kind of the final time for me. It's hard to explain, but I can't do it. I just can't do it anymore. After seeing death, that much death, that often, for that long, I mean, just day in and day out for most of it, I can't do it anymore. And I feel that, it doesn't help, because I already feel like I didn't do enough during COVID, and now, I certainly don't feel like I'm doing enough. But I'd like to turn that into teaching people. Part of the reason I, had sent you the message about doing this, probably sounds crazy to do it on camera, but we as healthcare workers, we've got to be better about talking to each other. We've got to be better about just getting not our feelings, but just getting it off our chest when we need to. And compartmentalization is great. We have to have that, but there's got to be an outlet at some point. And I don't want to see what I'm going through and what's happened to me as far as the burnout and stuff happen to somebody else when it doesn't, because I do feel like it's avoidable, for sure. I wish that I had started to kind of take care of things sooner. But to me, that's a good way, is to just put yourself out there, and hopefully other people will start doing it too, and start, maybe not all on camera, but if it helps somebody avoid what I've kind of gone through, then that would absolutely be worth it to me, for sure.
What are your thoughts on the vaccine? You were required to get a vaccine.
Yeah, I did. It was either get one or don't have a job, and this was kind of in the middle of COVID, so I did get it. Now I never had COVID before that, so I don't necessarily think I should have had to have gotten it. I mean, I personally am of the opinion that if you can demonstrate immunity, then I think you should, or resilience. You know, that meant if I had to get tested every week, I was okay with doing that, but I had to get the vaccine. Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, I think if you are at risk, you know, if you have any of the risk factors that they've put out, that you probably should think about getting it. I think, you know, if you've had COVID a couple of times, you probably should think about getting it. But I think kind of in my case, and people, I know there's a lot of people that have not gotten it somehow and been just fine. You know, I don't necessarily agree with being forced to get it. That being said, I do understand the hospital side of it. You have to have healthy people working for you who aren't going to pass on, you know, things to
You
the
don't want to take a
patients.
risk, like, oh, this person was working for the hospital and wasn't vaccinated, and then there's a
Yeah,
huge
absolutely.
problem there.
Yeah. So that's how I feel about it. You know, do I agree with having to get it personally? Not necessarily, but yeah, it is what it is. I got it. I'm doing fine.
And down the road in the future, there could be another form of this, and
Absolutely.
we could go through this again, right?
That's very possible.
How did COVID ultimately fade away?
It's mutated and gotten weaker. I mean, the vaccine I do believe has helped, but ultimately it's nature doing its thing. It's the virus mutating and getting weaker, and you know, ever since then things have kind of slowly been getting better over time.
But there could be a strain that takes off again.
There could be. You never know. I mean, we're always right around the corner from a pandemic, an outbreak of some sorts. That's something we don't have a whole lot of control over, and that what we do have control over is, you know, how we respond to that, and being proactive is kind of what I'm on about now. And education is the best way to do that. You know, we've got this disconnect between the healthcare system and the public, and that's on us. That's on us as healthcare providers to do better with that. I also think that's a lot of why there was so much just craziness and confusion during COVID. Is we should have done better with being more transparent about how we do things, explaining things when we do them, with procedure with the patient, you know, simple things. And there's, you know, we've got to have people that are willing to step up and educate and bring forward the next generation who is going to do better, who has to do better. You know, there's even niche things like there's a company called AVLS. There's a guy named Joe Lewis. He actually is a respiratory therapist. He's got a channel and stuff. They do education with EMT crews, with flight crews, and you know that seems kind of like maybe to somebody like, well, why would respiratory therapists do vent education with those guys? Well, that's if they go out on a crazy call and pick you up, you know, it's on a helicopter or an ambulance ride, that vent is keeping you alive back to the hospital. So that's one area that I hadn't even considered. That's pretty cool. Is, you know, niche stuff is great. And I know there's lots of people who probably think that they may not have the greatest idea on what to educate and stuff on, but there's a room for all of it, especially with YouTube. YouTube is the future for a lot of things, but I think our industry for sure.
All right, Nic, thank you so much for giving us your thoughts on what you went through with COVID.
Absolutely.
As a respiratory therapist, and I wish you all the luck in the world in the future.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.